Welcome to Sipping Sense, Sips and Swigs, a monthly edutainment podcast designed to introduce you to intriguing and unique people and innovations in the wine world. My name is Stephanie Brown, author of Sipping Sense, Uncorking the Flavors of Wine, Entertaining and Healthy Cooking. And today I have the honor of speaking with my friend Tonya Webster. Tonya is the Chief Customer Experience Officer for the state of New York. She was appointed by Governor Kathy Hochul in 2023 as the nation's first governor appointed CXO. She brings more than 2 decades of executive leadership, guiding customer experience transformations across many sectors and industries. In her current role, Tonya works with the New York state agencies to improve how customers, be they New Yorkers, businesses, or visitors, interact with government by redesigning public services around their needs. Prior to her appointment, Tonya served as the Senior Vice President and Chief Customer Service Officer at Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Massachusetts, advancing access to health coverage and addressing maternal health disparities. Tonya also held leadership roles at Comcast that focused on expanding rural broadband and reducing the digital divide. Hi, Tonya, and welcome to Sipping Sense.
Thank you for having me, Stephanie. So excited
Oh,
for our conversation today.
yeah, me too. Are you snowed in?
I am snowed in upstate New York. Yes, I am.
Okay. How much snow did you guys get up there? Because we got a whole lot down here in the city.
Yeah, we got about in Albany about 2 feet.
Oh, Lordy, that's a
Yeah.
lot of snow. I'm surprised that Georgia native of you is handling all this snow.
Well, I've been 3 years in upstate now, so I feel like I figured it out a little bit. Figured out
Oh,
how to do the dig out.
okay. All right, good. All right, so our theme today is all around customer insight and the value prop. So I want you to give the audience a little bit more detail about what you've been doing over the last 3 years and with your new role, and then also just do a layman's definition of CXO so we're
Yeah.
all on the same page.
Absolutely. So, the Chief Customer Experience Officer, let me step back and talk about what it means for the state of New York. So, what it means for the state of New York is how do we make government services more efficient? How do we make them work better? So, sometimes when you're in the DMV line and it takes forever, how do we make it easier for you to interact with the state? So, that's the whole role. And I get to oversee over 100 agencies and help them improve their systems, their processes, and whatnot. So think about when you go in to apply for benefits. And if it takes you, one of the things that we really focus on is how do we reduce the time tax? That's what we call it. How do we make it so that you're not in one of our offices all day, or you're not on the phone with the Department of Labor for 8 hours or something like that? We make it
Mm-hmm.
just easier for you. So that's the important work that we've been doing for the last 3 years. We've made great strides in opening access to education, services, benefits, better transportation, and things like that. If I had to define what Chief Customer Experience Officer really is, what that means, it's how do you take the interactions that people have, right? And how do you put people at the center of everything that we do? So it's not about what's the most efficient thing for the government, right? It's what do people actually need? How do you think about their needs and the services that they need first? And then how do you design those experiences with people at the center? And we call that the human-centered design. So that's what we're doing here in New York. It's pretty incredible because now we get to actually problem solve for the people versus saying, what's the best thing for this agency, or what's the easiest thing for them, but what's the thing that's going to help resolve the issue for the customer.
So is this a new role for states? Because I don't recall this being something that I've heard about in other parts of the country or even in New York or even from Massachusetts where I spend a lot of my time too. It's like this must be brand spanking new. So Governor Hochul is like leading the charge here.
Yeah, she's just an innovator. And why shouldn't you have this role? Why shouldn't we have roles where you're putting people at the center of what you do and you're empowering, agencies to go and actually solve the problems that are at hand? So yes, it is groundbreaking. We have a lot of states now that have leaned in to say, hey, what are you guys doing over there in New York? Can we come visit you and take a look? Governments from around the world, businesses from around the world. How do we get together to do it? I think what's interesting about the way New York State is approaching it, it's we're bringing nonprofits, we're bringing the government and public sector together because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So a lot of this stuff has been done before. I've been doing this work for, as you mentioned, a couple of decades. So how do you bring everyone to the table to kind of solve the largest problems at hand?
So I know you and I had lots of conversations about your role at Comcast. So I'm gonna take you back there because a lot of
Okay.
the a lot of the work you did there was really thinking about the diversification of the customer and how, in one neighborhood it looks one way and in another neighborhood it looks completely different.
Yeah.
How have you used that experience in the work that you're doing today? Because New York is very, very different depending on what
Yeah.
part of the state you're sitting in.
Yeah, yeah. And for us, diversity is so important. We're one of the most diverse states. You got to think about it all. So I'm proud that I get to think about it all end to end and all the different people. And whether you're in North Country, or whether you're down in New York City. So I think that's the unique perspective that I get to bring to the table is being able to represent all different types of voices to kind of say, did we talk about this? Are we thinking about this group? How about we go in here? And one of the things that I think is interesting is how we get out and talk to people because all modalities aren't the same, right?
Right.
So for some, we're getting into the churches to kind of hear what is your experience? What do you need? Some we have to have it in town halls and forums and things like that to get that feedback. Some you just have to do survey. So just making sure that we have many channels that we can reach people through. We think about some are technically savvy, some aren't. Some you have to, there's accessibility issues. We have to bring that into the mix. So I really love that our office gets to help think about those different things and make sure we have a diverse voice for the people we serve.
Right, right. So my podcast is all about wine and hospitality.
Yeah,
So people go like, "Well, why is she talking to the customer experience officer of the state of New York?" Well, it's actually very similar. If you
yeah,
think about it, you think about how people receive hospitality is through all different, ways, whether it's walking in a retail establishment, online, at an event, at a restaurant, every place you go that you might be interacting with hospitality or the beverage industry, it's very similar. So all the things you just talked about make sense, except for maybe having wine at church. But they drink that there too during the communion.
they do. They do. And one of the great things about my role is that I get to cover hospitality because that's part of our state and the economics and the beverage industry and all of that great stuff. So, yeah, it all does tie in hand in hand. It really is all the various industries in our state.
Right. And the industry is, it's got its conglomerates like the Gallos of the world and the Diageos of the world that have lots of dollars to handle what you might do around how you interact with your customer. But
Yeah.
it also has a complete opposite side of that. It has all these small businesses that are trying to figure out how to show up and be noticed by their customer. And
Mhm.
so talk a little bit about you different modalities and different ways to interact with your customers. But if you're thinking about a small business, what are some of the things you might tell that small business around how to make sure that they're really leaning in and understanding what their customer needs are? And are there tools that they can use that you have used over the course of your career? Kind of just give them some insight around, what small businesses might be thinking about in this space.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I actually own a small business as well. So I think about this all the time. Um, you really, a lot of times we're trying to solve the problem for the customer without bringing and inviting the customer in and talking to your customers. And it's as simple as just asking them after an interaction, What did you think about that? How easy was it for you to do business with me? You don't have to have those complex platforms. Now they're out there and they're available, right? But it can be as simple as a Google form that you're sending out to your customers after an interaction to say, hey, tell me what you think on a scale of 0 to 10. Were you satisfied? Was I easy to do business with? Would you refer me to a family or a friend? That is so important. That word of mouth, especially for a small business, so important. But you're not just collecting the feedback. You got to do something with those insights. So if you're asking your customers for feedback, you got to put yourself in a vulnerable space to be able to accept it. And sometimes it might be a little tough, right? But you want to make sure you're able to implement some of those changes. If you're getting feedback that, no, this was a little more difficult than it needed to be, what are some processes you're going to put in place to make it simpler so that they come back, right? If they weren't satisfied with a piece of the experience that you're delivering, how do you turn that around for your business, for the communities, and things like that? So that's how you got to make sure that if you're going to ask for the feedback, if you're going to get the insights, make sure you're doing something with it.
Mhm, mhm. So what you just basically said is that it doesn't have to be complicated.
Right? It doesn't.
It really doesn't have to be complicated. Really, what's most important is deliver on what you hear.
That's right. That's right.
And how do you do that with the state? So you're hearing from millions of people around what their problems are. And so how do you create a way to understand what's our low-hanging fruit? How do you decide what's low-hanging fruit? And then what's the implementation feel like or look like when you find that low-hanging piece of
Yeah.
fruit that you want to solve for?
Yeah.
I know that's complicated with the state, but it's kind of what you just said. I heard the information. Now I need to figure out how to fix it, and then I need to actually fix it.
Yeah, yeah. So with the state, it's a lot of information and a lot of data that we roll up. To your point, you're hearing from a lot of different people on a lot of different issues. And especially now, there's a lot of need out there. So we roll all of that information up. We subsegment it into saying what groups where, what are the agencies that are touching the most. We covered almost 20 million people here in the state of New York,
Wow.
almost 300,000 employees that are touching them. And like I said, over 100 agencies. So for instance, we're doing overhauls of many of our websites, right? Well, because there's a need for heating right now. It's cold weather. We have heating subsidies, right?
Right.
But it takes a while to get through that process. So we're simplifying those processes. So what does that look like? And we're deploying resources across the state to make that happen is
Mm-hmm.
one thing I can tell you. Also with housing, going through the housing process can be very, very complex and complicated. So we've deployed a customer experience project around housing to make sure that that process is easier for tenants, for landlords, and things like that. So we're taking the big agenda items, which for the administration, affordability, housing, public safety, and things like that, because that's what New Yorkers have said is important to them. And we're making sure we're deploying those projects within those agenda items to make sure we're delivering how New York wants us to deliver. And then we go back and check with them, which I think is what's different about this. It's not that we're listening to our customer and we actually take what we hear and we actually do something with it. And then we report it back out to them to make sure we're being transparent.
Oh, that's
So,
good. Because sometimes it's one way in,
yeah.
the customer tells you what all went wrong or all the things that can make them better, and then you never hear from them again.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing the 360 loop with
Yeah, it
that
doesn't
perspective.
matter if my head's down and we're doing all this work and New Yorkers can't be proud to say they did a thing. They moved the state forward. So we make sure
Right.
we get out there and talk about it.
So now hospitality,
Hmm.
the beverage industry, the restaurant industry is a huge piece of New York.
It
And you
is.
can't walk down a street in New York without, in 2 blocks, you could probably see 20, 30 small businesses that are touching either one of those.
Yeah.
So is there anything that has come up through your work in that space?
Oh, lots. We love our small businesses here in New York. Matter of fact, we have lots of events where we host them and we give them platforms and we make sure that we're supporting our small businesses. And we also make sure that we are hearing their feedback loud and clear. What's going to make it better? How is permitting? One of the big projects I have is business permitting, and how do we make that faster? And they want to have events. How do we make the events process and permitting quicker so that we're putting more money back into a small business's hands? So lots comes up through, for small businesses, and we really do try to support them because they are the backbone of our state. So
Wow, wow, wow. Yeah, I can't even imagine what the Chamber of Commerce and all those folks that are in that space, how many things they have told you about
yeah, I hear from it all. Part of
what's
this
going
job is
on.
driving the economy. So that's how we drive the economy.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so let's we're getting closer on time, so I don't want to keep you too long, but I also want you to think about 3 or 4 tips you would give someone who is in business in the state of New York or just in small business in general around customer insight. You talked a lot about touching the customer and whatever you touch and whatever you find out, do something about. But is there something else that you've learned over the years that you feel like really does work? And what would you say that would be?
Yeah, if I had to say three things to the audience, I would say one, it sounds very simple. We've talked about it, but make sure you're listening to the insights, make sure you're doing something with it, and make sure you go back and tell your customers what you did with it so they can see the improvements over time. They will be your biggest advocates. They will be your biggest word of mouth is so important. So just make sure you do those things. If you put your customer at the center of everything that you do, regardless of the industry, and I've been able to do this in hospitality and government and healthcare and all of these different kinds of things. But one thing that remains constant, people. People aren't different around the different industries, right? So you just got to think about that. They will be the ones to help you grow your business, to tell you what you need to fix, what you need to do. And, you know, that's the biggest thing I can say across all of these industries. If you listen and you make those changes, you're able to make huge strides and shifts in your business.
Okay, good. So if someone is looking to see what kinds of things the New York State government is doing in this space, where would they go to find your organization?
Yes. So we have a website, experience.ny.gov, where we are very transparent. We have blogs there. We have our toolkits that we share with everyone. Everyone can pull from that. And we provide updates on the projects that we're working on there. So that's the best place to go.
Okay, good, good, good. All right, I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah.
See if I can't find some more tips and techniques that I know you have up your sleeve. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate it. Anything I can do. I'm a New Yorker too. Please,
Yep.
please let
I was
me
going to
know.
say thank you for giving the Executive Chamber a platform to talk about what we're doing and kind of demystify what customer experience is and how it just applies across industries. So thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. And so, to my listeners, please make sure you sign up for my weekly emails on sippingsense.com. That's where I share recipes, my monthly wine picks, and information about upcoming events or business tips from the industry leaders like Tonya. You can join me in Napa for our Toast to Diversity wine tour coming in April 23rd to the 26th. I still have 2 spots left. And also, you can save the date for our annual Sunset Wine Crawl on Martha's Vineyard on Friday, August 21st. So until next month, stay safe and warm.